When a 14-year-old boy killed his father, nobody understood how someone so young could do such a thing. However, as the details about his reasoning slowly came to be known, there was an outcry of support, a level surprising even him. In 2009, Zachary Neagle was 14 years old, an 8th grade student at Valley View Middle School in Caldwell, Idaho. In school, he seemed to do pretty well. It was said that he had an IQ of 115, above average, and performed better than his peers when it came to his schoolwork. He even competed in a regional wrestling competition on behalf of the Valley View Wrestling Club. However, things at home were said to have been much different. According to members of Zachary's extended family, he was a victim of physical violence at the hand of his father. Not only that, but his own uncle wondered if he might be being sexually abused, but he couldn't prove it. This was because at some point he found some child-related material on Zachary's dad, Jason's computer, material that he said was of kids around Zachary's age engaging in what he called daddy and daughter and brother-sister scenarios. Unfortunately, it seems that he was right when it came to his worries about Zachary. Zachary's parents, Jason and Cindy, got divorced when he was very young, got back together again, and then divorced for a second time when he was 8 years old. After that, Zachary's father was said to have begun laying hands on him, and it only got worse over time. Zachary had 2 much younger siblings as well, but he said that it didn't happen to them. He also said that it happened when his mother wasn't around and that she didn't know anything about it. One Saturday in May of 2009, Zachary hit his limit. He went into his father's bedroom while he slept on the couch and grabbed his rifle from its hiding spot. He then approached his father, who had woken up, and aimed it at his head. His father, seeing the gun, rose his arm to shield himself. Then Zachary fired. The bullet went straight through his wrist and into his forehead. He was dead before he could react. Zach actually called 911 himself. He told the dispatchers that his father had been shot, never implying that he was the one who shot him. The dispatchers, confused, asked where the gun was now. Zachary only responded with, "It's not in the house." The police made their way out to the home shortly after. The investigators found a .30-30 rifle with a spent cartridge and 2 live rounds in the garage, buried under a few cardboard boxes. Most of the things in the garage were covered in a layer of dust, but the gun was completely clean. It was evident that it had likely been stored in some sort of case. They then found that very case under the bed in the master bedroom. The police then spoke to Zachary and his younger siblings. The younger siblings, a boy and a girl, told them that, while their dad napped on the couch, Zachary told them to go into their room and that he would go listen to some music in his. The 2 younger kids went into their bedroom and shut the door, only to hear a loud pop shortly after. It was after that that Zachary came into their room to speak to them, only telling them to stay into their room from then on out. This immediately told the police that Zachary was either the shooter or knew it was going to happen. Whichever it may have been, he was their lead now. Zachary, on the other hand, acted as if he had the same experience as his younger siblings. He told the investigators that he was in his own room, listening to music, when he heard the same gunshot. He said that he immediately ran off to check on his siblings, who he found doing some cleaning in their room. When he realized if they were okay, he went to go check on his father, who he found dead on the couch. He said that there was a smell of gunpowder in the room and that the front door had been left slightly open. However, when the police called Zachary's mom to say that Jason had been shot, she immediately responded with, "Who did it? The kids?" With all of this, the police decided that they would try to get some more information about Zachary's character. They went to his school to interview some students who knew him. There, they heard that, aside from his academic performance, he was a bit of a troublemaker and didn't get along with any other students. It was even said that the school had filed a complaint about him after he peed into another kid's locker after an argument in gym class. It was later said, "These are all things that indicate to us that the kid's got some serious problems. Nobody really liked the kid. He stayed to himself. He kept to himself. He didn't have any friends that he could call friends or anything like that." Given that Zachary's mother was in the hospital in Boise while all of this was happening, he was staying with his grandmother by her request. It was during this time that the police asked him and his grandma to come down to the station to talk. In the interview that took place after they arrived, Zachary didn't confess to anything, but he didn't deny anything either. In the beginning, he said that he didn't even know where his dad kept his rifle, but he later changed his story to say that he did know it was kept in the master bedroom somewhere. At the station, Zachary's grandma, grandpa, and uncle all told the police that his father Jason was, as they put it, very heavy-handed to him. The uncle remembered one incident in which Jason punched his son in the head 2 or 3 times. The uncle also said that Zachary did indeed know where the gun was kept. The police, interviewing Zachary, made it clear that they could tell by the angle of the bullet that entered into Jason's head and went through the couch had been fired by someone fairly short, about Zachary's height. Zach told the investigators that his father hadn't done anything to him in a while. When they asked what he meant by that, he wouldn't elaborate. While he had been calm before, he grew more and more emotional as the investigators presented the evidence that they had found at the crime scene. He began to hold his head down and soon erupted in tears. He said, "I want a lawyer." His grandma started to talk to him in place of the officer. She had evidently heard from him about what his dad had been up to. She whispered something to him, to which he responded with, "I can't say it again, I can't say it again." His grandma then said, out loud, "You need to tell why you did this." The conversation was being recorded, and this was enough of an implication for the police to arrest him. The Tuesday after Jason Neagle was killed, the police formally arrested Zachary on a warrant for first-degree murder. It was decided early on that he would be charged as an adult. Before much was known, he was labeled as a troubled loner who often lashed out and wasn't liked by his peers. That very well may have been true, but the reasoning as to why he acted in such a way at such a young age was something they wouldn't fully understand until much later. On May 24th, when it came time for Zachary's first hearing in court, the prosecutor told the court that they were fairly certain that they had a motive for the murder, but they weren't allowed to make that public yet. However, a detective heavily implied what had been happening by saying that there was a rough relationship between the father and son and some abuse of a sexual nature had been suspected. Zachary showed up in court looking terrified as the judge read out the accusation of murder against him. He was set to return to court in 2 weeks' time. The judge also imposed a high $300,000 bail on him. With that, a large surge of public sympathy grew for Zachary. One local mom told the media, "He's a child, and I know that I am not the only one out here whose heart is breaking for him." Many were unhappy that the state was trying to try him as an adult. However, the former Idaho Attorney General David Leroy said that it was legal to do so. He said, "There are a lot of very sympathetic and empathetic elements in any juvenile case, but where the consequences and the alleged crime are serious, so must the treatment of the courts be appropriate." Toward the end of May, though, the public outcry had grown so intense that the Canyon County prosecutor, John Bujak, said that he would revisit and amend the first-degree murder charge. He said that about 50 people on one day alone would contact him over phone, email, or fax, protesting the murder charge and the fact that Zachary was being charged as an adult and held in an adult jail. The police came to believe that Zachary was indeed abused by his father in that manner as more evidence came to light. They found that Jason did, in fact, have a lot of child-based material on his computer at home. Medical examinations with Zachary also showed signs of that sort of abuse having had taken place. However, the prosecutor couldn't confirm with complete certainty that the allegations were true. One of Zachary's uncles on his father's side was very angry with the way that the media and the public had been handling the case. He didn't believe that his brother, Jason, would have done such a thing. He couldn't believe that there was so much empathy for Zach before the investigation was finished and a conclusion had been made. He said, "Nothing to date has been mentioned as to Jason or the man that he was. Jason Neagle was a good man, was a constant member of the family, and would lend a hand to anyone in need at any time. If there was suspicion of any wrongdoing on his part prior to his death, why was it not brought up until a time that he will never be able to defend himself?" Still, support online was generally unanimously in favor of Zach. One comment, which fairly summarized the rest of the others, read, "He obviously had enough of the abuse and couldn't take it any longer. He was looking out for himself and protecting his siblings from ever being abused sexually and physically from the man that they called their father." An online petition was put together where people could sign in support of a lighter sentence for Zach and better treatment in the meantime. They encouraged the prosecutor to seek more lenience against him. Many people signed it from all over the world as far as the UK, Germany, and even South Korea. Zachary had gotten himself an attorney as well. The man said that he took the allegations of abuse very seriously. He said that they would soon know whether the allegations were true, but he already believed that they were. He said that it would be proven through the evidence at hand, although he didn't go into detail about what that evidence was. He was likely referring to the medical examination that hadn't yet been made public. Cindy Neagle, Zachary's mother, appeared on Good Morning America to talk about what had happened. She said that she didn't believe her son was capable of murder at all, saying, "He's a very loving boy, very smart, very into his family. I couldn't believe he had that type of violence in his body. I believe they were very close. Even when it wasn't visitation time, he would ask to go stay with his dad." In the meantime, Zachary remained in custody in the Canyon County Jail, although he was held separate from the adults and was allowed to have visitors. However, that wouldn't be the case for long. Eventually, he was moved out of the adult jail and into the Southwest Idaho Juvenile Detention Center. This was done on the belief that he would have better access to counseling there. With that, his next hearing was also delayed until June 11th. Before that even happened, a large group began preparing to hold a rally outside of the courthouse on that date. With the outpouring of support both online and in person, many people were calling for him to receive some sort of counseling instead of prison time. When his hearing came around on the 11th, that rally was held. Many people were shown outside the courthouse, picketing with signs demanding his release. One of the people who showed up was the mother of a girl who used to play with Zachary when they were younger. She said, "We were neighbors with Zach's grandpa and knew the family. He's a child, not an adult." Zachary's legal team expanded to include a man named Chuck Peterson, who was very passionate about the case. He wrote on his blog, "Zach was charged as an adult, but the picture shows just how juvenile he was, wrapped in chains and clad in a yellow jumpsuit. He was just a kid." Idaho law provided that if Zach went to trial and lost, a jury not believing he had to kill to protect his siblings, he would serve a life sentence in an adult prison. Ultimately, we settled the case for a blended sentence that placed Zach with the Idaho Juvenile Corrections. If he did well in juvenile corrections, he had a chance to avoid an adult prison and could be placed on adult probation. On June 26, Zachary pled not guilty to the charge of first-degree murder he was facing. His attorney also asked for a speedy trial, hoping that the whole thing could be resolved in the next 6 months. Zach's team argued that years of sexual abuse had led to the murder, adding that it had occurred because of Zach's desire to protect his younger siblings from his father. In fact, he said that Zachary had been abused the very day the murder occurred, right before his father took a nap on the couch. The speedy trial didn't come about, however. In fact, it would be about 9 months before Zachary ended up in the Canyon County Courthouse again. This time would be different. He would be testifying on his own behalf. This was where he finally told the courts the sordid details of all that he had gone through during his childhood. He told the court that the abuse had been taking place since he was either 8 or 9 years old. He admitted to shooting his father, saying that he had done it to protect his younger siblings. They were about to be the age where it started happening to him, so he figured it was only a matter of time. It was during this court date that the medical evidence was presented as well, showing signs that he was telling the truth. Zach said that on the day of the murder, his father had just forced himself upon him before he went to lay down on the couch. Before he fell asleep, he told Zachary that he would, quote, play with him and his younger 2 siblings later that day after he woke up. Zach said that, more than anything, this statement was what made him realize that he couldn't put up with it any longer. He said that he had wanted to call his mom and tell her what was happening, but his dad had threatened him not to in the past. He then added, I thought about running away. In fact, I had some bags packed. But I knew I couldn't take care of my little brother and sister, because my little brother was only 6 and my little sister was only 9. Hearing his dad sound like he was about to wake up, he didn't have any more time to think. He felt that killing his dad was the only option that he had. He admitted that his dad was awake when it happened. With all of that, Zachary's lawyers were able to secure a plea deal. Even with the deal, many felt that the punishment would still be harsh. If Zach pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter, he would face anywhere from 7 to 30 years in prison. With this deal, he would also stay in juvenile custody until he turned 21. If he accepted the deal, he would be allowed to return to court just before his 21st birthday to see whether or not he would get probation or see jail time. While the judge originally seemed like he might not allow the deal to go through, it eventually did. On May 12, 2010, almost a year after Zachary shot his father, he was sentenced. He was given 7 years in the state juvenile corrections system. According to one of Zachary's lawyers, the judge voiced his hope that Zach would get the help he needed to be rehabilitated. Zach was given a chance, a blended sentence, and an opportunity to get out of that adult prison sentence. While some were a bit happy about the outcome, feeling it was much better than what he could have gotten on the first-degree murder charge, many were unhappy that he was seeing any substantial jail time at all. However, the juvenile system is where Zachary would remain. The new lawyer working on Zachary's case, Chuck Peterson, would come to visit him in jail from time to time. He said, "I am a dad, and I could not imagine what might lead a kid to kill anyone, let alone his father. Fathers are supposed to be the protectors and providers. But here was this little kid in an orange jumpsuit facing the most serious crime, charged as an adult, as if this little scrub was a man, all 4'8" of him. 80 pounds of a kid in a place where inmates would be able to lift more than that amount with one hand would turn him into someone none of us could imagine." Zachary was serving his time at the Nampa Juvenile Correction Center. He was able to make some friends there his age, but most of them weren't in there for near as long as he was going to be. He actually got pretty close with some of the staff there, keeping in touch even after they left to go get other jobs. He tried to stay on his best behavior, hoping to get out as early as possible. Chuck Peterson wrote, "I can report that Zach Neagle is doing well. I spent a little time with him a couple weeks ago just before Christmas. His case is pending. At some point he will go before a judge again to see when and how he might be released. His future is really in his own hands. If he works hard and does not pose a risk to himself or others, the judge may place Zach Neagle on probation and he may still avoid that adult prison sentence we feared could end his life. He has grown up. He is taller and he looks great. And that fear that we had about him ending up a statistic seems more remote today than it did when he pled guilty to killing his father." Zach continued working while in juvenile corrections. He went to school there, hoping he would get some sort of job right after leaving if he played his cards right. Eventually, it grew near time for Zach to move on to adult probation. The Idaho Department of Juvenile Corrections requested more freedom for him, saying that he always behaved well in his visits with his family. They said, "He is a leader in his group and has taken on a lot of individual responsibility. His risk level at this point is a level 1, which is our lowest risk assessment level." However, the judge thought it was still too soon for the request, given that he hadn't even been there for 2 years. Still, he would be allowed supervised visits with his family. His mom was a bit disappointed, but was more or less happy that the regular visits would continue. The judge began dropping hints that he might release Zach on probation before he even turned 21. As that date began to approach, Zach was on his best behavior, for a while. 2 weeks before he was set to go out on probation, he started acting out in jail. He later admitted that it was self-sabotage. He had grown frustrated watching the other inmates with bad behavior move forward through the program while he wasn't feeling any momentum. Still, drawing helped him calm down while he was incarcerated. One of these staff members had helped teach him. Looking back on the drawings he made, he said it's fairly easy to tell his feeling at the time by the symbolism present in the different pieces. At points, he would even make drawings for his father, with the word "sorry" scribbled below. He was more torn up knowing that some members of his dad's family refused to talk with him ever again, but luckily they were a few that lived out of state that he wouldn't have been seeing anyway. In 2014, Zach was finally released on supervised probation. While in jail, he had gotten his high school diploma and had even taken about a half a semester of college courses. Still, reintroduction to the world would prove to be rough. He had spent most of his formative years locked away. Aside from a small program where he was put into a house for a month and offered some advice on how to function in the world, he didn't really have any sort of set path ahead. He came to find out that things would prove very difficult for a 19-year-old felon with no experience. With the challenges at hand, Zach did get arrested for petty theft only a couple of weeks after he was released. Still, the theft wasn't large enough to violate his probation, and from that point on, he never got anything else beyond some traffic infractions. Zach ended up getting 2 jobs working in food service that he held at the same time. Eventually, he went down to 1 job, working at a vape shop. He said that if his employers only looked at his background check and didn't know his story, they would shoot him down immediately. The ones who would hear him out, however, didn't have much of a problem with him. Still, Zach wasn't allowed near any alcohol or weapons, making it hard to find roommates who would comply with his restrictions. Given that he was set to be on probation until he was 30, that would prove difficult. Still, Zach was surprised to see that he rarely ever encountered anyone who thought badly of his actions once they heard his story. He also came to get 5 tattoos that he designed himself. One of them was of some of the zodiac signs. Eventually, he wanted to get all of them along his left arm. However, the positivity wouldn't last. One night, Zach had been hanging out with his younger brother, the one who he killed a man to protect. They were playing some video games, talking about wrestling, pretty normal stuff. With that, Zach left to go home for the night. He was driving down the freeway back home when he got a horrible phone call from his mom. His brother had died in his sleep. His family still doesn't know exactly how he died, but there was no foul play. It was likely the result of an undiagnosed illness. But still, Zach pressed on. He even came to do an interview with the Idaho Press Tribune. He talked about the time he spent locked up and how he wanted to keep going forward. Having served his time, he said, "I can choose to be bitter or happy for the future."
Stay positive is definitely looking forward. Looking forward to trying to get a new house. Looking forward to just different life experiences to get to enjoy. I want to be able to travel, go to see new things, try new things.
Speaking of how he felt after the murder, he had this to say.
It was hard. It was kind of the mixed emotions of knowing that I kept my siblings safe, but it was also hard losing my father and taking their father, and just everything that surrounded it, the situation, both just directly after and then in the years following as well.
He even spoke of how he felt when seeing the outcry of support from complete strangers all over the world.
It was really weird seeing myself on the news and just getting letters from random people that I had never known or whatsoever, and that they had known my story when I kind of really just didn't even think about it at that point.
Now he said that his life was pretty normal. He spent most of his life just going to work or playing with his dog. Every once in a while he'd go hang out with some friends. He said that looking toward the future helped him more than anything else. He said, "Looking forward to different life experiences. I want to be able to travel and go see new things, try new things. I'd just like to have that new adventure and different stuff that I could possibly do." One day he wants to leave Idaho, but with his probation he can't do that just yet. As soon as it's over, he wants to pack his car and leave the state behind for good. He doesn't know where he'll end up, hoping to stop at whichever city he feels like, getting odd jobs along the way. While he does still feel guilty for depriving his siblings of their father, especially when seeing his sister, he doesn't feel sorry for himself. He said that his siblings never once held it against him. He chooses to be happy with what he has, saying, "I have my own place, a beautiful puppy, a car, a family that loves me, and friends that support me. Not everyone has that."